Welcome everyone to our next session, Filmmakers and their films. Today we are going to talk about Eric Rohmer and his cinema of behavior. With us we have Raghavendra sir, who is a well-known author, film author and critic. Over to you, sir.
Cinema can either be socio-political, which is exploring the social world, or go inwards into the mind and its outward manifestations. Okay, now film cannot, even a fantasy film cannot but be either socio-political or psychological. By and large, it is socio-political. If you take, say, for example, a thriller, you take something like, say, a science fiction thing, E.T. Okay. What is the social element in ET? Can you recognize the social element in ET? You know, Jaws, for instance, you take something like Jaws, there's a social element in Jaws, right? The town, the economy of the town, and that sort of thing. So the question thing is that unless a film goes off entirely into the inner state of a human being, it is somehow, even if it's a fantasy, has to engage in some way in the social world. Fantasies would take something like Lord of the Rings, there would still be, some social world, or that social world itself is fantastic in some way, or marvelous. For example, the elves, this and that, the conflict between the elves and the human beings, the fact that the throne of the kings is under dispute. There are people fighting for the throne. All these are essentially socio-political elements which are not from the real world, but actually put into this make-believe world. But it would have, shall we say, take some elements from the real world itself. For example, struggle for a throne would be there in Shakespeare. It would be in all sorts of other things also. We are aware of that, right? Now, by what we call psychological cinema, okay, what I'm calling, I'm not saying what we call, what I'm calling social psychological cinema, by and large does not emphasize social context. Okay, can you give me examples of what you think are psychological films? Anybody? What do you think are psychological films? Not necessarily Indian. I don't think there are any Indian films. Is there any Indian film which is psychological? Can you think of anything? What do you understand by the term, not what I understand?
So
Can you
I
think of
think
anything else?
one good example is Joker, the film Joker.
Yeah, you could say that in some sense. Yeah, Joker is that, right? Joker, Taxi Driver, many of these are psychological, right? Joker, for instance, does not go into the socio-political world at all, hardly, right? Whereas Batman goes into the socio-political world, crime, law enforcement, and all that. Joker does not. Joker is actually an inward take on a film which is generically around the external social world. You get my point? Okay. So you're right. Joker is a good example. Indian cinema, by and large, the thing is in the socio-political thing, the social like a kind of cinema, people act according to on the demands of pressures from outside, social pressures, economic pressures, and so political pressures and that sort of thing. Seven would be in some sense, yeah. So you could say by and large, what happens is that when you start talking in terms of psychological, okay, you end up usually ending up with American examples by and large, and some European examples. Okay, what happens is that you won't see this from countries which have gone through huge amounts of social change. Okay, huge social turmoil, social, because the question is that this social thing intrudes in some ways. It intrudes upon the individual in some way. So the result is that these inner states, and Russian cinema will not explore inner states. Chinese cinema does not explore inner states. Japanese cinema, can you think of any Japanese cinema films which explore inner states? No. Would you think Ozu would do that? Does Ozu do that? No, I think he doesn't do that. He is again, dealing with certain typical states, socially identifiable states like father-daughter relationships, father-daughter, father-son, okay, friends, okay, superior, inferior, subordinate in a military situation, and that sort of thing, right? That's what the Ozu would do. Ray, once again, is dealing with social situations, and if it's husband, wife, lover, the wife and lover would be very different from the from the American thing of the adultery in American cinema, where it would be individual. Here it would be wife and husband and lover, rather, social types of some sort. Okay, not stereotypes, but still social types of some sort. Okay, is any issues on this point? I think you would agree with this, right?
So what about Ghatak, sir? Meghataka Tara. I mean, there
No,
again
again,
is a
look, he uses,
love triangle.
Gatak uses a certain kind of acting, which is very, a very melodramatic, very, intense kind of acting. But basically, what are you dealing with here? You're basically dealing with a woman who's exploited by her family. And these are basically social types, right? Okay. The good for nothing elder brother who's, trying to make both ends meet, trying to pursue his career, but can't. There's no interior journeys here, right? There are no internal journeys here. Okay. So the question is, even Gatak doesn't have. I think the Malayalis one or two, Adur and all that, but I'll go come to that a little later. There's some effort on their part to get psychological in. But by and large, Asian countries, third world countries, okay, countries which have gone through, cataclysms, okay, like even Fassbinder, for example, Germany has gone through a whole amount of, political catastrophe of some sort, war and all that, chaos and that sort of thing. But you won't find much psychological depth in German movies. There's no effort there. Okay. It's the same thing with Russian cinema, which has gone through too much. So that Russian psychological cinema is non-existent in Russia. Okay. Now, the psychological interpretation of movies, which you use, is not dependent on the subject matter of the film being psychological. You get me? Oedipus complex, if you use it on Raj Kapoor's films, that is a psychological interpretation which comes from a certain kind of theory, a certain psychoanalytical theory, which is used on cinema. It doesn't mean that the content of a Raj Kapoor movie is psychological. You get me? Okay. So the question is that it's a little different, right? So the thing is, if psychology is the study of the inner person, inner self, behavior is its outward manifestation. Cinema, by and large, is an art that catches surfaces, right? And psychology means going inside, which the camera can't do. Okay, so what happens is, filmmakers take recourse to metaphor. Um, people emoting intensely in front of the camera, privately alone. Okay, or close-ups, introspective dialogues, confessions, and that sort of thing, right? I think people, you would see this happening in Bergman. You see Bergman's Wild Strawberries. You see this happening in Seventh Seal. You see this happening in Persona. You see this happening in, I think, The Silence. And a lot of this other stuff. Through a Glass Darkly, right? Winter Light. All of them, this intense, cries and whispers, right? You see that intense feeling inside of, bottled up emotions and this and that coming up. It's not so much behavior as much as psychology, inner exploration of the inner self. Okay. Now in India, okay, Adur Gopalakrishnan tried to do this, some kind of not psychological cinema as much as a cinema of behavior. Okay. And stuff like Mukha Mukham, Anantaram, okay, Kodiyatam, where he does not try to get into the mind of the person as much as try to find the manifestation of his behavior. For example, you look at Anantaram, you don't find the socio-economic, cultural, socio-angle, political angle. Have any of you seen Adur Gopalakrishnan's movies? Mukha Mukham, for example, could have been taken because it's set in the world of politics. It's unusual in that it's set in the world of politics, but it deals more with behavior. A person suddenly, changing over a period of 10 years, becoming somebody else, okay, becoming somebody completely different. As a result of which, he was once upon a time a communist leader, inspiring person, but 10 years later, he's completely a drunkard and he just goes to sleep. That's all he does, okay. There's some element of behavior explored in Adur Gopalakrishnan. Okay, so we go to the next slide. See, Taxi Driver, as I said earlier, Taxi Driver, you have that scene, you remember you talking to me, that scene, famous scene, where De Niro does. Okay. So the question is, so that is once again, you can call it psychological cinema. Is there any motivation? Is there any social? Are there any social causes attributed to Travis Bickle's behavior in Taxi Driver? Does anybody have anything to say on the subject? Are there any? Shall we say psychological reasons? They say Vietnam War, right? You remember that? They say Vietnam War. But this Vietnam War seems to be more. I mean, what exactly is the kind of behavior that war induces? Experience of the war induces. You don't really know, right? So in this particular case, he doesn't quite tie in what exactly Vietnam War veteran is doing with this. He's a Vietnam War veteran. We know that it's just to say he's disturbed, in a disturbed state of mind kind of thing. Okay. Shall we go to the next slide? Okay, French cinema of behavior. Now, as already I talked to, I mean, in an earlier class, I dealt with this. Okay, France is different from the US because the historical trajectories of the two countries have been very different, right? I won't go into this. The US valorizes the individual. It valorizes the individual as the thing. The basic way in which causality proceeds in American cinema is through the motivated individual, right? French cinema is basically dealing with the citizen, which means that the individual is not so important, but the collective which is important. That is your. So the question is, in French cinema, what happens is motivation is through relationships. It is not through the individual in that sense. So if Hollywood brings in this thing of individual motivation as the key way in which causality can proceed, in French cinema, it seems to be that citizenship is important, and therefore it emphasizes social behavior and actions on the basis of relationships. You look at all of this. For example, you look at Renoir. You're familiar with Renoir. You look at Renoir. You look at Truffaut, for instance. I look at something like Jules and Jim. As I said, my favorite film. Jules and Jim. You know what's her name? Catherine, right? You've seen Jules and Jim always, right? Mohammed, you've seen it. Catherine in Jules and Jim. Does anybody know what's going on in her mind? She's completely weird. She does all kinds of things, right? She's completely unpredictable. She does all kinds of things. Does anybody know what makes her tick? Why exactly she's conducting herself like this in terms of psychology? No, right? You're supposed to understand her in some sense only through her behavior, okay? Through her behavior, right? This happens very frequently in the French New Wave, in all French cinema. Renoir, you've seen Rules of the Game. You've seen Rules of the Game. La Chienne. La Chienne, I think you should see this. La Chienne, Renoir's La Chienne is a very important film. Again, about a Sunday painter, his wife. They're all types in some sense, but you get a sense of, they're not quite types because their relation wise, they're slightly different from each other. Okay. It's not like a wife and husband and lover, not that kind of that level. But there are certain, it's more than type. It is a slightly, it's not individual as much as behavioral types, you could say that in terms of behavior. Okay, there are certain characteristics, right? Now, because of this, the American emphasis on individual, the French emphasis on citizen. Okay, American cinema going towards individual motivation, French cinema going towards relationships, action proceeding from relationships. What is happening? Happened is that American cinema acting has gone on a different route. French acting has gone on a completely different route. Okay, American acting, okay, has gone along the thing of what is called the method performance. Okay, now let's take Godfather, right? No, what's his name? Marlon Brando, Al Pacino are both method actors. You know what is method actors? They probe deep they go deep into themselves, right? Go deep into themselves. See, there's a fundamental thing in India. They talk in terms of good acting, means they talk in terms of only Robert De Niro, Al Pacino would be the emblems of good acting in India, right? Somebody like Kamal Hassan would try to sort of, emulate Brando, or you try to, be deeply. I've seen Kamal Hassan trying to do a Brando thing on YouTube and all that. But the basic thing is that Al Pacino and De Niro and Marlon Brando have come from a milieu which valorizes individual. India is not that kind of milieu. Okay. So India, if you say that Brando is a great actor and you try to do an imitation of Brando in India and you do a kind of Brando kind of performance in India, it has no meaning at all, right? You get me? Okay. In fact, Indians have to come up with their own kind of acting. What it is, I don't know. I can't tell you. But I think these new people like Irfan Khan, like Nawazuddin Siddiqui, like your Neeraj Kabi. I think many of these new people, they don't overplay. They don't try to. They don't do this behavior kind of thing. They fit in the roles. They whatever roles you give Neeraj Kabi, you can give him Gandhi or you can give him a criminal. He'll do it with equal conviction without really overplaying anything, right? He'll do that kind of thing. he could be very convincing in both roles, but he won't strain himself very much to move from Gandhi to murderer. He won't do very much. What is Gandhi here? Maybe a little bit of, shall we say, mimicking certain movements of Gandhi and all that. Or let's say, like the Jain monk he plays in Ship of Theseus, right? That role to some other place where he plays the, I think in that woman where that movie with what's her name? What is
Hitchki,
that?
Hitchki
Hitchki, I
is.
think. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hitchki, right? There he plays a villain, kind of the teacher who's a villain. But I mean, he exerts himself very little to move from this thing to that. So I would say that that would be the kind of thing where it's neither he doesn't play up the citizenship angle, he doesn't play up the behavior angle, he doesn't play up the thing. He fits into the role, and a small twist here and there can make him take on a completely different role. I think that would be the ideal kind of thing in realistic, not in, I don't mean in the mainstream film. Okay, I mean in the kind of, the art film, or the whatever, the new cinema, new Bollywood or whatever. That would be the kind of thing. Okay. So the question is that basically Hollywood and French cinema demarcate, and both Hollywood and French cinema, okay, like Swedish cinema, they demarcate characters, one through psychology, other through behavior, without emphasis on social context. You get me? French cinema is able to do that. German cinema today cannot do that. Okay. German cinema, somehow or other, World War II will come in. Somehow or other, the effects of World War II will come in. That kind of individuation, which is why German cinema is not developed after the war. I mean, that kind of acting is simply not there. Okay. That kind of acting that you have in French cinema, that kind of acting you have in American cinema simply does not exist in German cinema. Okay. So German cinema, Russian cinema, again, the same actor will play one role here and next another role in another thing. They exert themselves very little to move from this to that. Okay. There's also excellent acting, but there are no stars there. French cinema still has stars. It's like, who would be the French stars? Michel Piccoli, I think, is a great actor. Jean-Louis Trintignant is a great actor. Okay. A couple of, I think, what's her name, who plays Catherine in Jules and Jim? What's her name? There is a great actress, French actress. I think this one, Sandrine Bonner is a great actress. Catherine Deneuve is a great actress. They're all, they're all. So the question is, they're still stars, okay, because they're given to do more. Russian cinema has no stars. I think only one or two, and even they're sort of more cult kind of thing, macho people and all that, not actor stars. Okay. So the question is, okay, so the question is Piccoli and Trentino, Trintigant, okay, they do not emote in isolation. Okay, they don't emote. You rarely catch them in close-ups. You won't have French cinema catching people in close-ups, trying to, like Bergman would do, like French American cinema would do, where the close-up is very important to reveal an inner state. They wouldn't use the dream sequences in that way to denote an emotional state. Can you name a dream sequence which denotes an emotional, psychological state in cinema? I would put it as something like, I think, Wild Strawberries. Okay, Wild Strawberries would use that. I think something like Cries and Whispers would do that. Okay. You take, for instance, the something like Scenes from a Marriage, Bergman Scenes from a Marriage, that intense thing of an individual, almost loathsome in his individuality. That kind of thing, characters, who are so individuated in that way. There is almost no social context to which they relate. It's as if they are themselves. They are being themselves. That kind of thing you find in Bergman, but not so much in the other Scandinavian films. What about Kaurismäki? What do you think is Kaurismäki's thing? I think there are a lot of Kaurismäki admirers here. Okay. What do you think is Kaurismäki's thing? What is Kaurismäki deals with psychology? He doesn't, right? He doesn't deal with psychology. He doesn't even deal with behavior in that sense. It's more,
Movement
it's more
circle.
social. Yeah, it's more social. He's dealing with social situations, and those people are types in some way. The minor, out of work minor, right? Police woman, okay, match factory girl. They're basically social types who are, they develop inner the urges of some sort. But the question is, there's no emphasis on psychology. Okay, they develop into some kind of. They could go off into extreme rage, as in match factory girl. They could go into that kind of high emotional states, but those emotional states are socially engendered. You get my point? Okay. All right. I'll go along now. Now, in French cinema, as you said, Green Ray, you said you liked it. You see her alone. But is she doing anything or is she not doing anything? Do you see her emoting? She is crying, if you remember, right? She cries. Okay. So in Romer's movies and French cinema, if people are alone, they're usually doing something. If you look at something like that violin film, what is it called? The winter,
A
Heart
heart.
in Winter, Heart in
Winter.
Winter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There again, he's alone, but the question is, he's staring at, studying a performance or tinkering with his violin and that sort of thing. You won't catch him alone. Okay, just thinking, you won't catch that alone. Usually doesn't happen. Just reflecting, that kind of thing doesn't happen. Okay, if he's doing that, it's reflection of some sort, but it'll be an impassive face. It won't be emoting like the De Niro or Pacino does in many of his movies. That kind of intense look, the camera focusing in, closing in, that kind of thing. You get my point? Okay.
Yes.
So the thing is, French cinema, because it's dealing with behavior, and behavior is outward manifestation of psychology. Okay, they try to make us wonder at why people behave in certain ways without explaining their behavior. You get me? Okay. So now I will just talk about Heart in Winter. Now the film deals with a single protagonist, but does not delve into his psychology. It looks only at his conduct in relationships, right? You get my point? Okay. Now there are two. What are the two relationships in Heart in Winter?
The
Are there
man.
any? Okay, one first of all, are there any social contexts specified in this movie? Are there any
No,
social context?
no,
Anybody can tell
no.
me? Anybody else? No social context, right? Except for the fact that he's a violin repairer. So basically, you're dealing with him as a person, not revealed through his psychology, but through his behavior, right? There are two key relationships in this movie. One is the relationship between Daniel Lotel. I forget his name. What is his name? Okay. Uh, Two relationships. One is with his partner. Okay. The other is with the woman, right? Now, what is the relationship with the partner? He doesn't like the partner, though they've been partners. He's a cold-blooded fellow. He dislikes his partner, though the partner is the boss. He's trying to get even with the partner now and then. You remember that scene when he's in the restaurant? He's talking to his, what is that woman friend there for? There's a woman friend, right? It's not a close relationship. It's brought in there. What is the reason it's brought in there? Can anybody tell me? Today the class is very quiet. Can anybody tell me why that relationship of the third woman, the second woman, is brought in? What is the reason? Why is that brought into the film at all? I mean, obviously, it should be obvious to you. She is not a. She has neither psychology nor is her behavior important, right? The only reason is so he can actually articulate to talk to. Yes, exactly. You're right. To talk to the protagonist, and when she talks, or when he talks to her, he can say certain things he cannot tell us directly, right? So the question is, what is that scene where he says something? He looks at her and both of them look at the other friend, the partner who's going out with his fiance. What does he say? Okay, with his girlfriend or fiance or partner. He says, there goes a man touched by grace, he says. Okay. It's a somewhat catty remark, if you remember right. It's a somewhat catty remark. He's sort of generally making a catty remark about his friend, whom he resents in some way. He's the boss. Okay. This guy is the chap who has got skills, who has got violin repairing skills. The other guy is the businessman who's a public relations person, and they're doing it like that. So the question is, he makes this. He says, "There goes a man touched by grace." He says, "Okay, what is your opinion of this guy, this male protagonist?" Okay, he seems to be. What is your reason? Does he love this woman? He denies that he loves her. Does he love her? She takes it that he loves her, right? Can anybody answer? The woman, okay, takes it that the protagonist loves her, right? And offers herself to him almost virtually, right? Okay. Why does he love her or doesn't he love her? He denies that he loves her. Then why is he gone at it this way, sending the signals to her, staring at her when she's doing that concertine? He stares so much that she's disconcerted. Is he
Maybe
afraid of losing
it's
his friend? He's not a friend at all. That guy
no.
is not a friend at all. Huh?
Maybe it's desire, but it's not possible, because
And
he's
even that
his
desire,
soul
he
is.
doesn't try to fulfill, right? My own understanding of this guy is that he's trying to get back at that friend in some way. Okay. He's not a friend. He denies that he's a friend. He's not a friend. He's just a business partner, he says. He's not a friend at all. Okay. The point is, what he does is he is trying to entice that man's girl, knowing fully well that he's attractive in his own right. Okay, knowing fully well, without having the shall we say the intention to take her away from him. So he's just playing with her in some sense, trying to use his property. I mean, in some sense, to put it very crudely, his woman, his girlfriend, his thing is trying to entice her away without fully using that opportunity in any way. That's the way I see it. Okay. Now the point is, okay, we have to interpret his conduct like this. What exactly is interpretation? Now, my issue about why this man is different from Romer is that there is an interpretation of his conduct. For example, does he do anything wrong in the whole film? Does he do anything wrong? Does he? Does the protagonist do anything wrong in your view? Does he do anything socially unacceptable in your view? Which you can find a possible, because the reason I'm asking is that friend of his or that partner of his slaps him right in the restaurant. Now that is something which is actually, in my view, okay, it is not permissible in social conduct. A person who does nothing actually blameworthy, this guy, Daniel O'Tale, has done nothing blameworthy, but the guy slaps him. Why does he slap him? This is the thing about saute kind of cinema, right? Now, he doesn't allow you to interpret this. So the very title of the film is A Heart in Winter, or Winter of the Heart, right? So the point is he's trying to make out that this man is cold, that he's incapable of love. So he's actually in some way judging this guy, okay, interpreting the film for us. He's not, Romer will not do this. That's the basic thing. Romer will not do this. So the basic thing about Saute is he's dealing with even Truffaut, something like Jules and Jim. Jules and Jim will not tell us why Catherine behaves in that way. Okay. But here Saute is an excellent filmmaker. He's in fact one of my favorite filmmakers of a certain kind of cinema. He will tell you in some way. He will put in reward, punishment, retribution, guilt, okay, regret. He will put in these things, right? He will put in these things so you can find out what these people are. So finally you can say that the character played by Daniel O'Tale is judged in some way. He's judged as somebody. I think you should try some other films of this guy also. There's one called I think Max and the Scrap Merchants. You should try this out. Okay, it's a masterpiece with Michel Piccoli again. It's a noir film. Try this out. Max and the Scrap Merchant. You should try him out. Again, there's a certain thing, retribution. He does certain things. Whether what he does is right or wrong. Even if you're not given more thing into his behavior, not given into his psychology, if it remains at the behavior level, there's still an effort to make us fully understand what the character is. You get my point? Am I making myself clear here? Okay. So the question is that the film interprets this guy's behavior as cold. He says winter of the heart, right? His behavior is cold, he's incapable of love. Okay. So the question, he keeps putting these things. For example, there's that scene, right? When the man and woman are in the cafe, there are a lot of these mirrors which are put all over the place. That man and woman are in the scene, the woman is firing this guy. This time is virtually crying. The man is crying. The woman comforts him. So that thing is there saying for control. She is trying to control him. Now these people are watching. What is he saying? That this entire thing in this relationship between this man and woman is one of control, is one of interpersonal politics, is what he's talking about. Not politics in the other sense, but interpersonal relationship politics in relationships. So he's doing that. Then he's doing that thing about I think his teacher or something. He visits that person. When he goes there and the teacher is having a tiff with his housekeeper or wife or some such thing. So these 3 or 4 mirrors of other relationships are put alongside so that you cannot miss what the purport of the movie is. So the movie is fully determined, what the characters are determined. They don't leave it to you fully for interpretation. Okay, you get my point. Now, if we're still interpreting Daniel O'Tale, it is because of the strength of the actor in that role. Okay. He seems to have a certain physical presence. What do you think of Daniel Lotell? Any of you? Anybody can say? What do you think of him as an actor? Okay. The protagonist of A Heart in Winter. What do you think of him generally as an actor? Did he make the kind of he's very good, he's very good, and he's got that intense presence at the same time, not doesn't get into psychology. Okay, he's purely by staring, by this, by that. Okay, he's an excellent actor, actually, a really excellent actor. But the point is, it's because of, for example, if they put some other, I mean, a lesser actor in that role, shall we say Alain Delon. Can you imagine Alain Delon, who's not a good actor really, probably a bad French actor? If you put Alain Delon in that role, he's a very handsome guy. Alain Delon is a very handsome guy, more handsome than this chap. Okay. You can imagine what would happen to the movie. Alain Delon simply does not have that kind of ambiguous presence that Daniel Lotell has. Now, Daniel Lotell is another actor who can play a bad role, a bad man role, good man role. He can play any kind of role. Okay. With a minimum twist to his thing, minimum exertion, he can do that sort of thing. He'll do it, of course. See, one thing about Indian cinema is you will never have the kind of, shall we say, behavioral delineation, right? This kind of sharp etching of behavioral traits in a character you'll never have in Indian cinema, because we don't, as human beings, as individuals, we don't have, at least our literature, our cinema has never got that kind of thing where this kind of psychological or whatever, it never gets into that. As individuals, we have, in real life, we have that, but cinema would not, literature would not produce that kind of thing. You don't have the psychological literature either. Okay, there are attempts at it, but you don't have that inner kind of thing. Usually when people get into inner states in Indian movies, in Indian films, Indian novels, those inner states are fairly banal. They're not particularly what they're thinking about, fairly banal, right? Like honesty. Should I take money? Should I not take money? Should I cheat? Should I not cheat? Should I murder? Should I not murder? It will be these big questions, right? Should I kill? Should I not kill? Okay. Should I be for my country and save my country, or should I not run away cowardice? In battle, should I be courageous or cowardly? It's at this level. Okay. Those are, those are inner dilemmas of fairly banal nature. You understand my point? Okay. That is not true of something like French cinema. Okay. Now, can we go to the next one? Okay.
Maybe on
So
a moral level, sir, I think.
where?
No, I think maybe on a moral level, honesty and all those things.
See, moral levels also, they're not subtle. See, for example, okay, if you look at, for example, look, morality is there in our everyday behavior. You look at your own relationship with your friends, right? Now you're always judging your friends. How is he doing? Is he selfish? Is he not selfish? Is he rather favoring his relatives over you? Okay. Is he, for instance, if there's a toss up between his own brother or his own child or something and you, okay, you're in the right, his brother or his child is likely to have cheated you. Is he going to side with the blood relative, or is he going to side with you? This is also morality. Okay, let's ask Mohammed then. Mohammed, here, if a friend, okay, would side with his brother rather than with you, though that brother has diddled you out of some money, okay, would you say that is morally upright or not upright?
Maybe it depends on his circumstances
No,
again.
whatever. But the point is this: that brother has diddled you, right? Okay, he
Yeah,
cheated you out of
yeah,
some money. No, the
yeah,
point is this son, this man knows that the brother has cheated you out of some money,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
My
yeah,
point
yeah.
is this: if he has cheated you out of some money, if his brother has cheated you out of some money, I think morally you should say that he should be on your side
He's
rather than
not
the
your,
brother's side,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Otherwise, he's not your
yeah, yeah.
friend.
So the question is this: every single day, every single thing we are going through these moral things. The kind of morality that you have Indian fiction, Indian novels, and Indian movies is a morality which are, these extreme choices like say, running away from battle or fighting courageously, this sort of thing. Okay, cheating, not cheating. Okay, killing, not killing. Okay, okay, deserting the wife, or staying with the wife. I mean, these are very, very fundamental moral issues. They're not these. There are far subtler moral issues in everyday things. Should I dominate this person? Should I give him freedom to act in whatever I want? Should I dominate my son, or should I give him freedom to choose his own path? I mean, these are kind of things, right? That kind of morality doesn't engage us by and large. The kind of morality which engages our stuff is deep guilt at getting into some sexual layers on with somebody, okay, outside the family circle, okay, somebody betraying a friend, okay, killing somebody you love, okay, that kind of thing, running away from battle. These are the fundamental things, okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that these moral judgments that French will also make. For example, this character in Winter of the Heart, okay, has behaved in a certain. There is a judgment of this person. He has behaved in a despicable way, right? He is judged, okay. So the point is, they're much subtler. I don't think that he merits being slapped in public. I think it's a little too much. He has done that slapping in public to tell us about that man's behavioral characteristics, his coldness, the winter of his heart. Okay, shall we go to the next slide? Okay, let's. This is one of his early movies. I would rate this one of the greatest movies I've seen in cinema. It's part of a series of movies called Six Moral Tales. Okay, and all Rohmer's films are basically about heterosexual relationships. It's basically about that, and he explores them in various ways. Now the question is, it's very difficult to say what is going on in the film. I don't know how you understood the movie. So here are some questions you can ask about the movie. What is going on? You understand generally what is going on. You're not able to put your finger on what exactly that is. Why Jean-Pierre, Jean-Louis acts in a certain way towards Maud. What is the thing? Why does he pursue the other woman and all this, right? I'll ask some certain questions, right, about this film to understand what it is. Okay. What is the conversation with Pascal doing? The possible conversation about Pascal, Blaise Pascal with this guy in Vidal, right? One question. Second question, how are Vidal and Jean-Louis related to Maud emotionally? What is the relationship? Okay. So let's one by one we'll take. What is the conversation about Pascal doing in them? What do you think is the central purpose? Is there something about Pascal which is very important to it? We know one thing. Pascal is Catholic. This guy is Catholic. So obviously, in that sense, this Catholic thing is very important. Pascal is very important. So the question, it's important that he's Catholic. He has to establish the fact that he's deeply Catholic in some way. Is that all? What else do you think is going on in that scene?
And one more thing, what I feel, he doesn't like Pascal, which also means
He
he
says that he
doesn't
doesn't
like.
like. Yeah, he doesn't. But the
Yeah.
point is intrigued. Okay. Okay, somebody's talk. Okay, my understanding of this Pascal thing is this entire long conversation between Vidal is that when you meet two intellectuals meet after a long gap of 10 years, right? What is the first thing they were going to do? What is the first thing they're going to do? They're going to try to take a measure of each other, right? Where has this fellow come in 10 years intellectually? Okay, is he in my level? Is he not in my level? Is he intellectually? I mean, it's too gentlemanly to actually spell it out like that. But the point is, they're basically performing for each other. You get my point? Okay, they're performing. Both regards himself as an intellectual. Okay, both regards himself as an intellectual. They are performing for each other. Okay, so that you're generally one-upmanship. You know very well. Okay, there's certain one-upmanship between the two, right? That this though they're fond of each other, both admire each other, that element of one-upmanship cannot be avoided. So the question is, what is Vidal doing? Vidal wants to take Jean-Louis along to meet his meet Maud. Now the point is, Vidal lies. Vidal doesn't tell him truths. Okay, he doesn't give him. He tells him one story, the woman tells him another story. See, this is the thing about Rohmer. Okay, people don't tell people everything. Unlike Saute, there is a sense that people tell everybody everything, right? That when they're asked, that they won't lie to each other like that, right? In Saute's film, does anybody lie? Here, they actually lie. Okay. He says only once, I don't want to have anything to do with her. I'm not interested in her. She says, no, he's been trying to get back to me. I don't want to have anything to do with him. So she gives a completely different opinion of Vidal from what Vidal himself gives of her, right? With the relationship. Okay. So the question is, the question is that between Vidal and Jean-Louis, who does Maud prefer? Maud prefers Jean-Louis, right? She's bored of Vidal in some sense. She's bored of Vidal in some sense. She prefers Jean-Louis, though she's not in love with Jean-Louis. She finds him sexy in some way. She finds him attractive in some way. Okay. So the point is, okay, why does she try to seduce him? She tries to seduce him. Why does she do it? She tries to seduce him. You agree with that point? Does she try to
Yes,
seduce him?
yes,
Right?
yes, she
Anybody
does.
else has
Yeah.
any point? Does she try to? Okay, she tries to seduce him. Why does Jean-Louis, uh, shall we say, resist her seduction?
Because of
That
his faith, I think.
early in the morning, it gets too cold. Then he's in two minds that he almost gives in, but then she won't have anything to do with him. You remember that scene? He says, I want people who know their own minds, right? Why is Jean-Louis resisting her seductions? What do you think is the reason?
I think it's because of his faith. Because earlier also he mentions he has a tough
No,
time.
you know what it
No.
is. He feels committed to what he has already said the previous evening, right? The point is, if I've gone on saying something about what is this thing about women, my whole this thing about life, about this, about that, about women, relationships with women, okay, I'm committed to that because I express myself so clearly, right? Okay. So the question is, when he's expressed himself so clearly, she's prodding him in some way to break those things, to make him know the point. He's committed to whatever he has said. You get my point? Okay. So the point is, because he's committed to that course of action in some way, committed to that course of action, right? Now the point is this: that woman he's talking about, the ideal woman he's talking about, he's actually seen that morning earlier in church, right? He's seen her earlier in church, right? So the point is, he's not. I mean, that's very interesting that he's sitting in church, Catholic. He's looking around. He's not paying attention to the, to the whatever the sermon or whatever. He's not paying attention there. He's looking around and he sees this woman. The woman also looks at him. Okay, not just, I mean, a casual look. It's not the kind of thing. Then after this is over, after this mod the fiasco ends, after that he pursues that woman, the other woman, right? Okay, he pursues her. It's not that he hasn't seen her before. He has seen her before. But the question is once again to confirm to himself that he believes in love, right? He is running after her because she's Catholic, she's this, she's that. She is the ideal woman in his mind. But the point is, there are two things here. One is this relationship with Maud, okay? He respects her and he's got this thing to her, he's attracted to her. He has to prove to her that this other woman, right? This other woman. And this other woman is truly Catholic, he pursues her, okay? Now, what is I think Francois' position in that story? What do you make of the ending? What do you make of the ending of the movie? What do you make of the ending of the movie? Did you fully,
I
all of you
think,
understood the ending of the movie? You know
yeah.
what? You know this story, right? This Maud's husband has been having an affair with another woman, right? The point is, so she divorced him, right? No, no, you're not told who the other woman is, but there's been another one. Yeah, correct. The girl was Maud's husband's lover, right? The point is that she doesn't tell Jean-Louis anything about that. At the end of it, at the end of the story, when Maud and Francois meet each other for the meet each other on the beach, right? And then they know each other. They've seen each other, right? Okay, they know each other. So finally, this man goes and he confesses. He tells a lie. Okay, he confesses that that was the last fling he had. He has not had that fling. Okay, he somehow he wants to confess the fact that he's had the fling, but there is no fling. Okay, he's not had this fling with her at all, right? He goes and tells her. Then he realizes. That she is not frightened, or she is not thinking of what he has done to this woman. Okay, he is worried about what he will discover about her. Okay, so that is the basic thing in the film. So this basic thing of religion, self-deception, this that. Yeah, he has also he realizes that. Jean-Louis realizes that. Now the question I want to ask here is this: Does Jean-Louis, let us say Jean-Louis loves Francois, right? Does Francois love Jean-Louis? What do you think?
I think it's the mod's husband. Yeah.
Maud's husband. I agree with that. You remember that scene, okay? You remember that scene when he goes to light a cigarette and he goes into a room. I think brilliant scene that is. Okay, he just wants a cigarette and he goes into a room and she's there reading something and she wants a matchbox. Okay, then the way she looks at him, okay, as if he's some intruder, that he's some It's a great scene, absolutely great scene, right? I mean, these I don't think that this kind of relationships has ever been brought out in a three brilliant performances from these three. Okay, that he goes there, he just wanting a cigarette. Okay, that's all he wants, to light a cigarette. And she looks at him as if he's transgressing in some way. Okay, you can see that hostility. At the same time, it is not open hostility. Okay, the point is she's been very friendly to him with him in social circumstances. But once the circumstances become explicitly sexual, as it happens in this particular scene, right, a possibility of being explicitly sexual, she'll shun him. But she has not shunned that doctor thing. She has had an affair outside that man's marriage. Okay, so the chances are that Francois has chosen Jean-Louis more as a kind of, as a kind of Catholic, a kind of marriage of convenience, rather than, the chances are that Maud may have loved Jean-Louis more than he loved, than his wife loves him. It's possible. Okay. After that, she's married somebody else. That marriage was also not turning out properly. Okay. So you can clearly see she's attracted to this guy because he's intelligent. He's intelligent. He can argue. He can talk. Okay. These are the things. So finally, the film. Think about this is Rohmer's early movies. Other 6 Moral Tales are not nearly as good. This is a masterpiece, I think, because the kind of sharpness you bring to Jean-Louis' character, to Maud's character, and to Francois' character in these 3 things, the relationships itself, the way they interact with each other. I think, it's very rarely that you come across such a sharply etched performance. The other movies are a little different, okay? But the basic thing about Rohmer is we speculate about behavior. Saute tries to do away with our speculation. He's trying to give us that this is what really happened. Okay, this is the kind of thing he does. Okay, let's go to the question is this. Let's go to the next one. Okay, Rohmer by and large goes with the thing that many things are not possible to know. Like in our everyday relationships, in our own everyday relationships, it's not possible for us to know many things about each other, right? Okay, you're always speculating about your friend. Is he going to do this? Is he not going to do this? Is he not going to do this? Is he that kind of thing, right? How loyal is he? Is he going to? These are all questions we put out and we go on taking. So the question is, we learn to gradually, even people close to us, we learn gradually to predict behavior in certain ways, right? That's a very important thing of everyday conduct. So Rohmer that way is more realistic than somebody like Saute. Saute would like to tie it up in such a way that he wants a final judgment on whether this guy, what's his name, played by Daniel O'Tale, is cold or not cold, whether he deserves to be punished or not deserve to be punished. Look, he's a very good filmmaker. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, he's a very good filmmaker. Probably the better movies that he has made, I would say, Max and Scrap Merchants. Okay, but here Rohmer is different. Rohmer is very different. Now, when you come to the second film, Aviator's Wife, now he has started doing very different things. He is no longer using stars. Okay, and this element of my Knighted Mods is very sharp. Okay, but at the same time there's ambiguity. In the other 6 Moral Tales, some ambiguity is much less. They're more cynical in some way. They're colder in some way. I'm not very fond of them. This is a masterpiece. The others I'm not so sure. Okay, when you come to Aviator's Wife, the opening scene is what? The opening scene is 2 people having a talk. The camera could have followed the plumber instead of this guy. You get me? It's purely accidental that the camera is following this guy. You get the sense that if the camera had followed the other guy, so his later films are far more democratic. Okay, in that sense. Okay, people are not, for example, in My Knighted Mods, that the camera could not have followed Vidal. You agree with me, right? Vidal is simply not interesting enough to be the subject matter of that movie. You get my point? This is not true of The Aviator's Wife. But now what has happened is there is no choosing a special hero. Everybody is equally attention worthy in a Rohmer film. Okay, everybody is attention worthy is the basic thing. Okay, let's look at that. Then the question is, each character is curious about the other character. What is this person doing? What is that person doing? So what happens is it's not like a detective story. Francois, his name is Francois. Okay.
Yes.
Francois is in love with an older woman. Okay. She is trying to break off with him. She's all the time talking about some other person whom she loves. Or is that? No, that's not in this film. She has the aviator whom she loves. That aviator's wife is coming back, so the aviator is leaving her. So she's in some kind of thing. She's carrying on this Francois because she doesn't want him actually, but the point he's too young for her and he's silly actually. She's not mature enough. She's looking for an older man. Her problems are all like what? I want this flat. I have to stay in the same flat. I want a relationship at the same time. I can't be without a relationship. So the question is, people, each one is trying to, trying to figure out some way for themselves. Action is not dramatic. It's as random as everything else. There's no predetermined text. People are allowed to say whatever they want. Okay. The basic thing is this woman, I forget her name. Okay, very good actress, but not a star in that sense. Yeah, it's only in Rohmer's films, I think. I forget her name. What's a woman who also in Green Ray. Okay. Yeah, correct. Alone in some sense in all three films. They're alone, but they're also their loneliness, okay, is brought out through relationships. Okay. It's because of inadequacy of relationships that they're alone. It's very different from the loneliness of Bergman's characters, right? Okay. Bergman's characters are lonely, alone, right? So here it is because of their inadequacy, their incapacity to fit into relationships that they're alone. So even their loneliness, their solitude is defined by relationships, by their incapacity to actually tie up into relationships they would very much like to, right? Okay. That is why. So their loneliness is like that. Okay. Now the question here is that people are always trying to negotiate with each other. So the thing is that they're always trying to interpret every gesture. They're trying to find this. They're trying to find that. They're trying to see. The basic thing is not to be hurt. It's very important. You want this, you want that. You don't want to be hurt. You don't want to hurt people, right? These are the fundamental things. So the question is, they'll never go into that kind of thing and they break up relationship. Never happens. If it happens, they try to ease off into relationships. They won't tell everybody anything. Okay. Anne wants companionship. She wants a flat to herself. She will not go with the postman. She's always trying to get rid of the postman. Now the postman meets this young girl, okay, who obviously they hit it off very well, right? This young girl whom he meets and they act like detectives, right?
Bus.
Yeah. Now the point is when the postman comes back to his the girlfriend or whatever, Francois, okay, Anne comes back to Anne, he does not tell her about the other girl, that he met this other girl, that this happened, okay? He conceals it. Now, this is the fundamental thing about Rohmer's movies. People conceal things from each other, okay? We know certain things, but from their concealing, we know the relationships are, you see, like it's like this, right? The people who are closest to you, whatever closest to you, you're always closest to you, whatever relationships, friends, or whatever relationship, you're always have a little thing about revealing everything, right? You're always holding back something. The reason is you don't know how that information you give is going to be made use of. This is a fundamental thing. You don't want to, this. So the question is, that is what Rohmer is dealing with. So the question of indeterminate relationships are indeterminate. You never know for sure. That is what makes him a modernist. You get me?